have the honor of welcoming all of you wonderful people to this great poetry reading tonight. I want you to know that these poets have made this a benefit for the store. They've all donated their books. If you buy them, the money goes to the store. We thank them for that generosity. I just want to say my name is Carol Minkiti. I'm the wife of Ifeanyi Minkiti, who died 3 years ago and bought the store 15 years ago because he loved this place. He felt that the beloved community of poets could save the world. And you'll find that there is poetry from all over the world in this store. So thank you so much for coming. And also we have people on Zoom as well. So it's a big night. And thank you for coming and being with us.
So my name is Robert Carr. I'm so pleased and honored that Tom and Max invited me to do this brief introduction. The last time I was in a room at a reading with Tom and Max was when Max invited me to read at the Medford Historical Society. Tom arrived with his sketchbook for calligraphy. And I think that's something that many of us are familiar with. It's one of the great gifts that he offers to the community. At that same reading, Max had his guitar at the front of the room and his voice. He opened and closed the event with songs that would become his latest album, Traveler. And the reason I'm starting here is because I really, in my heart, believe so deeply that these two men are multidisciplinary artists. They are keen, keen observers. And whether it's with the guitar or the voice or the pen or the paintbrush, they are observing and listening with a keen awareness of everything around them. That's truly what we find in their most recent collections, Good Harbor and Far Cry, where these powers of observation have informed exceptional, exceptional poems. I also agree with what was just said about the importance of poetry and its ability to change the world. And I believe that both Tom and Max have applied a voice and a lens to topics that are both relevant and current. For Tom, to keenly observe the evolution and devolution of queer friendship, as we see in poems like Heavy Rain, never a moment not spent in the delirium of your trembling wish to resound with the spritzing bliss of a wave and a cock and a fist. And for Max, in the context of his family, and it's so good to see you here, Wendy, to articulate the power and authority of women, wives and daughters and students, even as the freedoms of women are under assault. As in the student with an undocumented family in Dreamer, she decides to redact nothing because I've taught her God, not because I've taught her God is in the details, but because she knows there is nothing illegal about her. These are fighting words right now. And we as writers must be ready to fight. I am so pleased and so proud to ask you to now welcome Tom Daley and Max Heinegg.
Well, I knew Bob Carr would do a wonderful job. I'm sure Max did too. So I want to thank you all for coming. This is a benefit, and I think given the number of books that have been sold, which all were donated to the Grolier, the number of admissions, I think there was something like 65 or 70 people on the Zoom room, and a lot of people here and in Zoom land gave donations of $20 and $30 and $50 while they were, signing up for the reading. So thank you all so much, $1,500 I don't know what that covers in the terms of the Grolier's expenses, but this has been an institution that has sustained so many people for so many years. And I am so grateful to Ifani and to Carol and the McKeedy family for keeping this going. It's really it's a jewel, it's a prize, it's something we're very lucky to have in the Boston area. There are not many places like this anywhere. And I also want to just thank James Fraser, who is took over as manager about a year ago. And I just have had a lot of opportunity to work with him. I come in every Wednesday and I sign books. I've been selling a lot of books online. And so we've just had these amazing conversations. And when people walk into the store, he's so welcoming. Ask them what I can do to help. He's so knowledgeable about everything that's on the shelf. Honestly, it's a real breath of fresh air. Anyway, so I want to thank him. I want to thank a couple other people before I start the reading. I mean, very big thanks to Bob for coming all the way down from Maine. He's going back all the way back to Maine tonight. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Thank you to Sarah Lefsick, who published Far Cry. Thanks to the interns. Mateo is here, but also Olivia and some of the other wonderful people who work in the store. Judson Evans wrote a wonderful blurb. I want to thank him. John Altabello, my partner, helped me through the very difficult period after my friend Phil died and has been very supportive in the whole process of getting the book. Your dear and dangerous mouth is open to the sunlight. In your red jersey and white t-shirt, you are a cardinal on holiday. No mistake that you boasted that the bishop who baptized you later elected a pope. Your teeth are touching. They might be turning forgiveness or trust into a fine powder. You are the chosen vessel of an elixir that ferments the act of seeing into a love that scours, an infection that needles and cleanses. The angle at which your neck supports your skull leans your caution into the courage with which you withstand the sprightly chatter of the death wish. They called you the plant healer. But every fingertip that picked away the mealybugs might later squish to soup the gnats that long to drink the wisdom from the fluid of your impatient and sun-loving eye. Gay blade, I think of your blister and your splinter. I think of your thumb, green with covetousness and love. I think of your teeth fixed on the good seasons, your breath with its ripening repair, your knack at incantations planting the pleasurable sun. how delicate the skin was on your shoulder blades. Any fierce hug would set it astir with hurt fire ants scrambling into pockets and pores. Here, old contender, bring me your scalding sachet. Bring me your scolding sense of the proper alignment of recent trends in thermals and socks. Your eye, always split between nasturtiums and hawks. Bring me your pie crusts, crumbly with stamen sweet or berry sour forecasts. Your weather forever channeling itself into exhausted vessels that ventilated but barely furnished the corners and parlors of your cleverly marvelous yet querulous heart. The lost and found. A helicopter's propeller blades are battering the currents of the dawn. They are rifling for something stalking the sidewalks. But it can't be you, caged in the crematorium, all your footfalls done for, all your slicing shade cataloged and chilled. How I still summon you towards me, that noisy joy, that winking and coruscating charm, moving like a suit built from feathers, lighter than bacon, steeper than the sky, with your hip sway, girlish when you wanted it, then chainsawed under your timberline aftershave. You flounce toward me with your kindly abrasions, your mincing mischief, your sportive glee. In a club called the Lost and Found, how you held your head stiff as a 12-inch ruler, while your hips pepper-milled the disco floor strewn with white-hot diamonds. Your sneaker feet bouncing under the trampoline and the amphetamine of your smile. Infant of Prague. Climbing the back staircase after our night swilling at the bars, your glasses off, you saw a paper bag squatting on the landing. You grabbed my hand in terror, half mock, half real, and said, "Oh my God, it's an infant of Prague." Only you could have conjured that crowned Christ child with the orb that the altar guild outfitted in different vestments for each liturgical season, purple for Lent, white for Easter, on the side altar of a Roman Catholic church, out of a sack somebody had left in dim light on a staircase. Only you could knuckle my funny bones so, your hand curling up, your fingertips digging into my wrists, holding on for dear life as the raucous riddles of the world and the blasphemous hallucinations blew by us in a spasm of grimly glorious guffaws. Far Cry. This is the title poem. And this is a lino cut I did based on a photograph of row houses in Mount Pleasant, which is an area in Washington, D.C., where a bunch of my friends live, near where Phil and I lived. And thank you. Far Cry. Though we couldn't hear it from where we lived, just north and west of us, the hooting cry, the eerie, humid cry of gibbons imprisoned in the zoo, hooted in rebounding ululations over the row houses of DC's Mount Pleasant. A truncated hiccup fused with the urgent inhaled coo of a woman trying to suppress the commotion of her passion so as to not disturb her neighbors. The cry repeated itself with the heft of a ritual syllable, accelerating, amplifying, crowding itself into the mortar of the chimneys that it brushed. It seemed to assert the primacy of impulse over deliberation, to warn that degrees of order are a fragile bulwark against the incursions of the whooping vocalizations of the hemmed in and the caged. Now your gone voice cruises the roofs of Northwest Washington. Your old sexual hunger hunkers its pangs between the zippers and the condoms. Your lips rummaging the air for downdrafts, for the rise from the cellar holes, for the good stink of the chimney shafts. A gray mouse
Can it be fixed?
breathing the air with the steam of an unalloyed joy. Second Tuesday, the moon lays its sheen on the neighbor's slate roof on the second Tuesday after your death. All the stone shingles pool in a circle of light, and the air's lost its tremor of moth. All your gone whispers are grinning me down. All your licked grimaces are ferrying me off to some speedway of snicker and frown. Sorry, your pants were insulted. I'd still be wearing them if my waistline hadn't outgrown them. Fashion. You were embarrassed, no doubt, by my goodwill get-ups. 1 year later, you were still horrifying over the striped sweater I wore over a pair of wool cordovan pants, popping with pimples of brightly colored thread. Another time, you picked disgustedly at the pills on a woolen pullover, as if plucking a few of them would make them all go away. I wore that sweater with some ill-fitting, high-riding white jeans, and you asked if they were jodhpurs, as if I were riding off to a hunt with Jackie Kennedy and her set. How you loved her fashionably sunglassed in sorrow, reconnoitering her grave with Bob at Arlington 2 days after her burial. The eternal flame still lit by her late husband. Medium-sized sex gods tucked in the fold of a tasteful summer scene. Watercolor gratitude for some gift or favor. A few pictures, even negatives from a visit where you pouted all over the event. Your petulance as ripped as the abdomen of one of the postcard jocks you sent me, yanking up his collegiate sweatshirt to reveal his belly button. Sweet importunings to come, now seeming strange in the context of the long legions of trouble that marched their martyrs through the battlefields of our dissonance. Your blandishments, touching at your touchiness. How could I have soured so when the record logs so dulcet? You never wrote your resentments. There are no testaments in a slightly cramped hand to your mockery, your browbeating, your bulking up with backbiting and disdain. Death is the only. Death is the only triage that time can maneuver. Death is the impertinent egg yolk left to shimmy down the windshield. Words fail, but death cannot fluster in the wake of its unpeeling. I want to say that because I have conjured you with such intensity that I have conspired with death to keep your oblivion at bay. What is it you would wish me to do with death? I cannot afford to not crank open death. so as to permit the ferocity of your predicaments to tattle me upright. I am now, in your mind's eye, an excuse for death to leave some dribs of you behind over the drab dray horse of time. I address the virtual impossibility of conjuring you in verses that are merely descriptive. Your hair was the color of river sand. Your eyeglasses magnified your wide eyes. You seem to be drifting beyond my pupils into some stash box in the brain. Above your upper lip, an acre, often plied by mustache-serious fingers. South of your belt, your snake with his blue jean hide was a fire break in the roughneck forest of your crotch. To the north, a khaki top, immaculately white t-shirt you probably had ironed. There were always men in the woodwork, splintering or shying under the wide rabbit trap of your eyes. There was always a feast being prepared in the scorching pockets of your salivary glands, always a haunch waiting to be palmed, a genuflection waiting to be blessed. Spectacle. Out back with the Vermont birches at Larry and Gale's. You remarking on the deficit of snow, the bald ski slope seeming warmer than the water in August in the surf off Nag's Head. In the back alleys behind your Baltimore home, the spry man in his horse-drawn wagon calling out the name of the cool fruit that kept you cool on hot days. On the beach at Wingersheek, you pointing out a row of barrel-bottom clouds, a kind of cumulus you named something I have now forgotten. Soon, all of the spectacles we relish together will fall through the gaps in our laps, forgotten among our variegated present and our attenuated future negation in the hectoring and merciful prospects of time. Am I any closer? Am I any closer to the final embrace of a living ghost I have inspirited with all of these choruses of you I have set to shouting? These reverberations from our shared era, these dioramas of you with your loving and imperious sweetness, your gentle and your startled. Call my name with your confounded affection. Glower at me with your roguish admonishments. Catch your palms on the stubble of my throat. I cannot leave you to history, nor to the cruel task of shuffling your extinction into a deck stacked with images that never can maneuver you into the right hand. Hearsay. I'm reading this for Nick DiMartino. I hear say that in the last years, your irascibility swelled. You worked your wrestling holds to promote convictions that others did not clench. Minor foibles by a server in a bistro tendered up a tizzy. Was it better then that I fractured our fixture with silent regret? A long disavowal, rebuffing your overtures with thin excuses, writing you back with the electric electronic messaging you hated when you had asked me to call. Weary of your verdicts on my comportment and my conviction, of your nasty and hasty appraisals, I eased your stiletto index finger away, letting it point and puncture someone else's silly shame. 2 more poems. Poets like to give a little warning because it gets pretty awful for people who are not into poetry. So even for people who are into poetry. So. Heavy rain, 2 weeks after your death. Because we have had so little of it, I leave off of listening to some poetry podcast to go and watch the heavy rain. A hurricane, you once said, is often a drought buster. The rain sculls across the street. I see it pile its surf over the asphalt and under the street lamp. The rain has nowhere to go but the storm sewers and eventually to the river that, when it funnels into the sea, survives intact, does not mix for many miles. You, on the other hand, have fixed yourself into the forever of a weather that soaks through all your wise climates, all your red sky at night weather saws, and keeps your mariners' mornings tattered as a hurricane flag. Last poem. I'll take you on a trip across the ocean and drop you top the Chesapeake Bay. Ain't nothing but a scattered ocean potion. The moon will send you on its way. Moonlight feels right. Pardon me, I can't sing, but I just had to do that. I send you off with the words of a pop song looping in my ears. Bursting behind us now, the Atlantic in late May. Your piggy on my back then, the 2 of us jubilant horseshoes brawling backwards into the foam. We crossed the Chesapeake to get here, spinning the long span of the bridge at breakneck, the words of the Starbucks song, moonlight feels right, spangling our earlobes. Your smiles demure and murderlessly limbed with the caution we are tossing to the wind. All quirk and plenty of play, and never a dull boy. Never a moment not spent in the delirium of your trembling wish to resound with the spritzing bliss of a wave and a cock and a fist. Always and every afternoon to fish and simmer in your barefoot glow. Never a time like this to know that the future will find us, but never let us go. Thank you. Buy some books, y'all. Buy some books. Buy some Good Harbor and some Far Cry. And send a donation to the Grolier while you're at it.
Hey, everybody. I'd like to just start off by saying thank you, sincere thank you to Grolier for having me here tonight, for inviting me to read with you. And also, if you don't know, after such a wonderful reading, and by the way, blown away by the fact that it was all from memory. Anybody? Everybody? Tom and also Eileen Cleary, who's the creator, editor of Lily Poetry Press, changed my life by publishing my first book, Good Harbor, which is both about the place Good Harbor, but also about the Good Harbor that I share with my wife Lindy over there and our kids. And it's also about trying to be a teacher and create Good Harbor for our students. One of my friends and his wife, Dave and Yen are here tonight. Dave works with me at Medford High School. I'm about to go into my 25th year. And while I was there, I got to teach Bob Carr's son.
That's true.
So all kind of coming together in a really nice way. So I'm a, like a, rock and roll folk musician type thing. And for a while when I had poetry unit stuff and song unit stuff, what I would do is I would show my students that one way to write a song, if you don't know how to write the chords, is you just take an old melody and change the words. And so we do that. We had a good time with it. And after a while, I was teaching a lot of romantic poets and a lot of people who wrote ballads. And, my whole life I was like, no free verse, nothing but free verse, no metrical, big rebel, Allen Ginsberg, what have you. And eventually, I don't know, the meter just sort of got to me a little bit. And it occurred to me that all the stuff I was humming in between classes was basically in tetrameter, which is just, like the whose woods these are. I think I know it's iambic tetrameter, it's 4-foot line. I started setting all these old poems to music just for fun initially. And the culmination of it is a record that I did called Through Traveler. And I've donated 15 copies. That's all the ones I had left, but I'll get more over to the shop. And I'm hoping that if you're interested, they can name the price. But my book and my record are donated tonight. So I want to read some poems tonight thematically, because sometimes I go to a reading and I can't really follow like the theme. So I picked poems that are all about animals tonight. And we'll see how it goes. So the first one's called Zoo. All right. And my hands will shake a little bit because although I'm like a cocky English teacher, I get a little nervous. So Zoo. Suicidal boys try the door to the polar bear who twists a 20-gallon bin into a chew toy. Seeing this, little hands slap the glass harder, knocking on a world that would not tolerate such puny masters. Their mothers call after them, holding them at a visible distance as they discuss recipes, wondering aloud if returning to their jobs is a good idea. Get the hell out of the house, my wife says. All that eating and shitting and cleaning kills your mind. In another enclosure, a boy sits plugged in, humming along to the bars, hardly noticing his peers, sweet-seeming tweens who knuckle to rouse the alpha, a 550-pound sage who chews on romaine and quiet. This is like a big-ass gorilla. We all wait for the potential to become kinetic. At last, we luck out to see him when he crosses, massive, effortlessly acrobatic, stronger than all of us, penned, but not entirely. This poem called Naturally. Everybody watches the Discovery Channel with their kids at some point. It's a bad idea. Something's going to die, right? Grotesquely, graphically. The epigraph is from Charles Darwin on the marine iguanas of the Galapagos. They assuredly well become the land they inhabit. I twitch into the couch as the hawk descends and talons through the iguana's body, repurposed for the peckish, tongues out for the blood. He's only doing it for his babies, Mine explains. We learn the iguanas landed on the, I can never say this word, archipelago, tomato, pelago, by hanging onto driftwood, blown across the ocean. Now they hold their breath for minutes, gnawing blue algae off underwater rocks, chewing watermouth. Some get rocked unconscious by dickhead seals. Some drown, but most find the ebb, sinking adapted claws into crevices and scale their way up to bask. Victors on, I can never say this one either, basalt. Sneezing rockets. I'm not a scientist. Sneezing rockets the excess salt. By night, they sleep, body to body in burrows. After an age away from home, we four sleep in a mess of legs, writhe out from bed sweat to take the light's commands. Soon, they'll grasp the way their mother and I fell into the open, our skin's dignity to dive and return, stealing heat in our salty wigs, these whitening crowns, and the dorsal scales of our starched clothes. This is a poem that is about bees. Right? If you know Eddie Izzard, covered in bees, we should be. Protect the bees. The epigraph, and no, we won't have a million epigraphs. Sorry, occasionally find a good one. It's from Marcus Aurelius, Meditations. That which is not good for the beehive cannot be good for the bees. Hive. We defy the rule of change beneath the same imperious skies. Aristotle once took our queen for a king, thinking we lifted our sons and daughters from the same flowers. The philosopher's dust, but the hive stows on. As you court monoculture, we are more and more our brother's corners. Absence reminds all that must be kissed to kiss back. Almond, coriander, apricot. The wind will remember us as pollen's porters, clever guests who saved sip by dram to pour the last in a trembling of wax. Our workers' royal jellies stuffing every little one's room with fuel, teeming winter's sleepy hexagons of sage, fireweed, basswood, tastes the earth gave us, 6 weeks enough for wings, bows rosined up by the sun. So I was talking a little bit about form and how as an English teacher, eventually you can't run from it. And as a poet, you can't run from it. You can try, but eventually it catches you. Sometimes it seduces you. And I wanted to also mention my student, Mateo, is here tonight. Woo! And he's a wonderful student. He's a budding poet. I'm so happy to see you here. And we did some stuff with form. I don't know like how crazy I went. It was teaching's been a little bit rugged, but this is a poem where I actually kind of tried to do, you know, a sonnet and tetrameter. The Robin. And the only prefatory bit is unfortunately I walked down in the yard and a robin that was trying to decorate its nest had basically like garroted itself on like a piece of tinsel. Sad. The Robin. Brambles scraped me when I freed him from the garland's noose of silver. Tinsel wire caught behind the beak. An old wreath's gift, the wind believed, should float toward new happiness. He'd sought the bauble for his nest to decorate the dog rose shade, where he had kept a thorn perch safe, enough to settle into singing. I lifted him by his flint wings, as ants descended his black throat. What does the sunshine say about fortune if the symbol of spring is hanged in search of shimmering? I think that's the only poem I've ever published that's rhymed. If you read it a little funky, you don't know if you're coming or going. All right, so North Shore. I love it. We're originally from upstate New York. My brother-in-law works for the Gloucester Marine Fisheries, and he would take us out on his boat and tell us all sorts of science stuff, and I would geek out and steal his ideas for poems. One day he took us out, and there was like a frozen dolphin on the beach, and I was like, that's a poem. And I was like, tell me all about it. What is this called? And he's like, it's called A Stranding. And I was like, well, there's the title. So your royalty fee will be 1/2 of a page of the magazine it appears in. But it was online, so you got nothing. A Stranding, rare for Gloucester. And also I want to read this for you because you like this one particularly. And I actually went back and edited it back to the line the way you liked it. A Stranding, rare for Gloucester, we found the common dolphin's frozen body beside a lost child's hat. 50 feet up from Lighthouse Beach of Annisquam, the top of the rock, that's its definition, where to the left, Vineland emerges. Wingershake, whose name is bird and body in the shoreline, the cold that does the trembling for you. His black tongue juts, hardened to indignance, the smile only an underbite. Gray hourglass flanks, a gift only a vulture can open, the crows and gulls content with eyes. How did he end up here? Chasing fish in the wading pools? Stranded on the ebb until he lay beside the Irish moss and the driftwood's brush. Below him, we see the small holes in the sand from birds' beaks, the wider ones breathing clams my nephew crushes with his sister's yellow toy shovel. The side of the good mammal peels, and only the season stays his disintegration. Did he miss a flood that would have returned him with its rising? Or did hunger tell an irresistible lie that he had enough time before the falling tide? This is another poem I wanted to read, especially because you liked it. This is a poem that paints teachers in a maybe not most sympathetic light. Let's be realistic. You didn't love every one of your teachers. And so in this poem, which is animal themed, I become the vulture because, and now you know that I do this, so I'm sort of throwing myself under the bus. But back in the day when I didn't have enough supplies, sometimes that happens to teachers. I would go in like the week before school and just sort of look around and see if there were any photocopy papers, just anything I could snap up. And I bring my kids so I could model it. This is called The Vulture. Like another godforsaken epigraph from Yeats. But I am old and you are young, and I speak a barbarous tongue. I'm going to put on the voice of this bad person, who I am. I tried to warn them, but from my beak they would receive nothing. They saw baldness, but that was adaptation. The building seethes in the winter, freezes in the fall. They took our committee for a wake, pleasant voices for gospel, but when it's drought, the wall writes itself. For one who grieved her mother too long, these are all the teachers who got fired for reasons I don't agree with. From one who grieved her mother too long, one for being gay, no. One who couldn't skip Bonnaroo, one Ivy Leaguer who couldn't hack it, one naive who drove girls home, and one unkempt who sat dutifully but too sour with his charges. You're thinking mentally, like, who are these people? I'll tell you later. You have to sign an NDA though. Meals to pick clean, the feathers from their affections, biographies, anthologies, DVDs, tape rolls, ballpoints, ancillaries, master text side shadowed over, flesh to digest before they whet another veteran. I let my brood maw the marrow, markers, copy paper, teaching them remnants of the habitat are fuel for ones who know the season's scarcities. Shred the remainder without sentiment. This is how our desert divides. You will again in August. Shit, it's August. As clean-winged fledglings settle in to make a home of it. Their dreaming will be my inheritance. It's fun to read. I've got three more. This one's called Rockport Gulls. Perhaps the slithering is not the black snake that was sunning itself on the tramway track. Maybe it is the crickets leaping unstuck keys of a push typewriter. Our children stutter step over splinters on the wood ramp, catch balance on the turntable, and I, where one lighthouse parapet tumbled 150 feet out of the blue. On the thin trail, all briars on the margins, sickening tent caterpillars billow, and out of air crunches from gull and fish bones beside poison ivy, a combustion of red ants in the grass, near one splayed in rotten humility. Dead birds singing in the light of day. This is her sister, who's a science teacher, actually sings this. Gallows humor and her fisherman's comfort with death's ubiquity. Ocean swirling around us, rope with random buoys on it, hardly mark the cliff. One would survive the fall, but be mangled. And the swarming gulls are a white cloud come down on the fishing boat. So many the men in wisdom don't even swat at them. They do not guard as much as own the gate, the gateway between the world we inhabit and the world as it would be without us. If the island's any indication, all stench and hunting. The airbrush bone my child snags as souvenir, and in the berry bushes, the eggs we should know to avoid. Here, the gulls catch us, full-throated and snarling, block the path. Near loitering fishing mackerel, where the recent great white was tagged, we wonder at the paddle border on her return, a brazen quarter-mile from the seal colony. How she trusts indifference allows her return, or doesn't know it follows. And I've got two more, and I really want to thank you for coming out and supporting poetry, and I just feel super welcome tonight. So I'm having a lot of fun right now. When I got up here, I was definitely like, haven't been on stage in a while. You forget how close to the microphone you're supposed to be. It's good. All right, so this is Good Harbor. It's my first book. I told you a little bit about what it's about. This poem is in it. This is sort of like, I'm going to read one from it and one from a manuscript to come. This sort of is kind of my wheelhouse is sort of North Shore, family, teaching, all together in one little thing. And it also includes me being stupid about things I should know about. Window guests. Near summer, the sparrows my wife called affectionately dirt birds nested behind our air conditioner. We woke at 5 a.m. to their conference. My neighbor emailed if I thought it wise, and more loath to offend than to disturb, I unscrewed the plastic accordion edge and floated the light braids of twig and leaf to the herb garden. But after, I found a powdery blue egg on the nursery ledge, and having overstepped, I left it there. That evening, we drove our brood deranged beneath the strawberry moon, the Algonquin named for the berry's peak, and the only one we'll see for 70 years. Unimpressed, the girls scampered down Robbins Farm Park's hill as we picked it, admiring pink, 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 about our final rose moon risen, and we, its fading guests. Teachers on the hill in June in Boston marked the moon in its clear field, the talk of last bells, summer schemes, and students floating away. Our years atomized out of relevance to the fugitives from our tempered dens, classroom windows clear again. On the longest night of the year, the science teacher finds Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn with ease, its rings seen as a single golden star. A bad student myself, I feigned facility, turning back to the straw beneath the berry, and the city's graphite, the moon sharpened for me as a kindness. She tells me as I'd touched the egg, the parents would never warm to it again. In July, the dirt birds returned, their stark alarms set for dawn. We let them stay. So, you know, anytime you can get a vacation in, you're winning. And we discovered, my brother-in-law was like, you should go on this thing called Frontier Airlines. It's like $5. It's gonna go great. Once again, I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do that. And so we basically stole like brother and sister-in-law, her sister's itinerary for Puerto Rico for the most part. We just followed them and kind of got the guidebook out. And there was one thing that was fascinating to us to see, which is the bioluminescent bays. And this was pretty good. We ended up going also with some old friends who are also teachers. So this is a little poem about letting your kids go, because we've got our kid going to college in a couple of weeks. It's just a little poem about being in Puerto Rico and seeing a magical thing as you're sort of considering what you're hopefully not losing. You're just sort of taking a little bit of a break from it. So bioluminescence. By night, through dark mangroves, we match our strokes to the mild haunt of coquilles and coconuts falling, following our kids' canoes and old friends' laughter at the guide's mischievous invocation of chupacabra, the vampirical goat sucker, keeping the darkness light. We pause in the center of Laguna Grande and drape our tarp over our tide vessels, watching our wrists get gem-lit, protists spinning around strangeness, bothered into beauty by hands become iridescent gloves. We hear they live 5 days, brightening but once a day, their last hours budding, the glint of cold light at agitation, gorgeous. But there are ghosts in the glimmer near the lighthouse that I read of in Espada's Alabanza, honoring the restaurant workers in that tower. Both blazed, remember? Yet after Maria killed the same number, we slept nights away, calm in the same country. Technology made the lighthouse of Fajardo a legend the boatman is fine without. But we need to know what to do with this brief light and how to respect its source. On the return, our children before us, our friend Danielle marvels they were only yesterday speechless. I can tell he's crestfallen at the way their need for him has changed, how the invitation of air signals the end of the nest. I tell myself brevity is what shapes beauty, in my fearful shell of oxygen, nitrogen, and carbon, consoled by a childhood lyric that somehow I glow with the astral. But looking up, we find Orion, risen in the hierarchy of light, at a distance only a story can reach, almost eternal. I scan the glitter, broken on the dark surface. It's beautiful. There's nothing to regret, even beneath so great a disconnect. What's above, not below. The sky, so much longer than the waters.